Multiple myeloma is a type of plasma cell cancer. In this mnemonic video, we'll cover important facts about multiple myeloma, so you'll be ready come test day. Looks like we've got some time before our flight to kick back and relax. Lucky for us, I'm on this airline's multiple mileage program, giving me exclusive access to this VIP lounge. The multiple mileage program will serve as your memory anchor to multiple myeloma. Multiple myeloma is a malignancy of the blood's plasma cells. Let's keep finding out about the unique characteristics of this cancer. Next, shift your gaze to those plasma balls mounted on the wall. This mileage lounge serves as a sort of arcade for people to play games and win gimmicky prizes like the plasma ball here. All these plasma balls should remind you of a plasma cell tumor. You know, since a plasma cell tumor is just an overaccumulation of plasma cells, right? Multiple myeloma is a tumor of plasma cells, the kind of B cells that produce antibodies. So what kind of antibodies are produced? Let's get to that next. This VIP lounge has all sorts of entertainment for its members, including some gambling action. This poker table even has a genie theme, you know, to fulfill everyone's wish to strike it rich. This genie cutout has his arms spread in a Y shape, kind of like an antibody. This antibody-shaped genie should also remind you of immunoglobulin G, or IgG, the type of antibody overproduced in multiple myeloma. You know, since immunoglobulin is just a fancy word for antibody and genie sounds like the letter G. The cancerous plasma cells of multiple myeloma overproduce antibodies, which are usually IgG antibodies. This overproduction of IgG makes up about 50% of all cases of multiple myeloma. Next, let's check out that Y-shaped bale of hay in the corner. This VIP lounge put out these soft hay beds so the pets of our flyers can wait in comfort. This Y-shaped or antibody-shaped hay is our recurring symbol for immunoglobulin A. You know, since antibodies are Y-shaped and hay sounds like the letter A. IgA is the other antibody that may be overproduced in multiple myeloma. Overproduction of IgA is seen in about 20% of all cases of multiple myeloma. Again, the antibodies produced in multiple myeloma are usually IgG or IgA. This distinguishes this condition from Waldenstrom macroglobulinemia, which usually produces IgM. Got that? Now that we've talked about the cause of multiple myeloma, let's get into some of the symptoms you can expect to see. Take a look at this rich old businessman enjoying himself in this mileage lounge. He's taking full advantage of this lounge's free drinks. Just look at all those empty red wine glasses. By the way, this empty red wine glass represents anemia, since anemia refers to a low level of red blood, which kind of looks like the red wine here, right? And all of these red wine glasses are empty to remind you that the blood levels are low here. The cancerous plasma cells of multiple myeloma typically replicate in the bone marrow, where they can crowd out the normal production of blood cells, leading to anemia. To be more specific, this is classified as normocytic normochromic anemia, which just means that the red blood cells are normal in shape, size, and color. This is because there's no deficit in the iron or globulin content of the red blood cells. There's just fewer red blood cells being produced. This manifests in patients as pallor and fatigue. Next, notice that this refined businessman happens to have a cane to complete his look. Canes are our recurring symbol for immunosuppression because a suppressed immune system makes you weaker, right? Now, you may be wondering, how does multiple myeloma cause immunosuppression if antibodies are overproduced? The answer is that even though lots of antibodies are produced, these antibodies are not very functional. For one, all of these antibodies are monoclonal, meaning that they look the exact same. This should make sense since all of these antibodies are produced from genetically identical cancer cells. These antibodies lack diversity, so they don't really protect against the variety of antigens and threats that normal antibodies do. This makes multiple myeloma more susceptible to infections, the exact definition of immunocompromise. Like we mentioned earlier, the businessman is bringing his dog along for the trip. See his chewed up bone? It's totally riddled with holes from his chewing. This hole-filled bone should help you remember lytic lesions seen in bone. These lytic lesions refer to hole punch lesions in bone, kind of like the holes in the bone here. Lytic or hole punch lesions are one of the most characteristic findings in multiple myeloma. As the cancerous plasma cells grow and divide in the bone marrow, they produce inflammatory cytokines, including IL-1. These cytokines then signal the osteoclasts on bone to induce bone breakdown. Clinically, this usually manifests in the vertebrae as a back pain in patients, and these lesions are visible as punched out holes in bone on x-rays. Okay, back to our gambling businessman for a minute. He's about to cash in on his winnings here with some prizes, and it looks like this guy is interested in the alien amulets. These alien amulets should help you remember AL amyloid. You know, alien for AL and amulet for amyloid. It's the alien amulet AL amyloid. Multiple myeloma can lead to amyloidosis, which is a fancy term for a buildup of protein fragments that deposit in various organs to cause damage. Specifically, the type of amyloid deposited is AL amyloid. AL amyloid is really just made up of light chain fragments from antibodies. Since you already know that antibodies are overproduced, the increased light chain fragments forming amyloid shouldn't be too surprising. And just like all other amyloid proteins, AL amyloid classically exhibits an apple green birefringence under polarized light after being stained by the Congo red stain. Obviously, this VIP lounge also offers free refreshments, including ice cream. This ice cream is fortified with calcium, as evidenced by that calcium cow branding. By the way, calcium ice cream is our recurring symbol for calcium, but this bowl here is overflowing, which should remind you of hypercalcemia, or high calcium levels in the blood. Hypercalcemia is a common sign of multiple myeloma. This calcium is released into the blood as a result of the bone breakdown that we covered earlier. This server is clearly distracted. Not only did he overfill the ice cream, but he's dropping all the jelly bean toppings as well. These falling jelly beans should help you remember renal failure. Get it? Because these jelly beans are in the shape of the kidney and they're falling, just like how kidney function falls in multiple myeloma. Renal failure is another characteristic symptom of multiple myeloma. The cause here is multifactorial. Mainly, the light chain fragments from antibodies or AL amyloid can deposit in the kidney, causing damage. In addition, the calcium from bone breakdown can also deposit in the kidneys, leading to impaired function. Regardless of the cause, renal failure is an extremely common sign, and you should be on the lookout for elevated creatinine or BUN levels in these patients. As an additional way to remember these symptoms, some students use the mnemonic CRAB, standing for calcium, renal failure, anemia, and bone lesions. I personally prefer our picture, but I just thought I'd include it for good measure. Now, let's discuss how this condition is diagnosed. Notice those tall stacks of poker chips on this guy's table. These stacked poker chips should help you remember the rouleau formation. The rouleau formation describes the stacked poker chip appearance of red blood cells on a peripheral blood smear. The red blood cells quite literally form these straight stacks that resemble poker chips or coins. This is thought to be a result of the overproduced antibodies, which can bind to red blood cells and cause them to stick to each other to form a line. Now, shift your gaze to the businessman's phone screen. No wonder why this guy is spending so big at the poker table. There's been a huge spike in the stock market today. See that big spike on the graph? This spike should help you remember the M spike. An M spike is detected in serum protein electrophoresis, or SPEP, in patients with multiple myeloma. The M in M spike stands for monoclonal, which literally translates to one clone. This refers to one population of proteins that looks exactly the same, as if they were all clones of each other. Multiple myeloma is a cancer, and you should know that cancer usually arises from replicating one progenitor cell. This leads to a bunch of plasma cells that are genetically identical. When these plasma cells make antibodies, they end up making the exact same antibody, a monoclonal population of antibodies. Make sense? In normal people, there is no M spike. Nearly every antibody looks different from one another, since we want diverse antibodies to protect against a wide range of potential threats. So, finding a single spike of one unique antibody, or an M spike, is highly unusual. This is usually the sign of a plasma cell cancer. I also want to point out that the M spike here has nothing to do with the type of antibody produced. In other words, the M does not stand for IgM, but rather monoclonal. And as we covered earlier, in multiple myeloma, you normally get an M spike of IgG or IgA. Looks like that dog got tired of chewing his bone and is moving on to a musician's banjo here. Of course, you'd have live banjo music in a VIP lounge, right? This banjo is our recurring symbol for Bence-Jones protein. Get it? It's the Bence-Jones banjo. Bence-Jones protein just refers to light chain fragments of antibodies that accumulate in the urine. These are detected through a 24-hour urine collection and subsequent urine protection electrophoresis, or UPEP test. It's worth noting that a rapid urine dipstick test for protein will show up as negative, since the urine dipstick only detects albumin and not the antibody fragments that make up Bence-Jones protein. Going back to our plasma balls, we should talk about another measurable sign of plasma cell overgrowth. If you take a biopsy of the bone marrow in patients with multiple myeloma, you can actually observe the cancerous plasma cells crowding out the bone marrow. In fact, a finding of more than 10% plasma cells in a biopsy is characteristic. These plasma cells have a distinct appearance with clock-face chromatin and many vacuoles containing IgG or IgA antibodies. Okay, let's end with a quick review of everything that we've learned here. Multiple myeloma is a plasma cell cancer that causes an overproduction of IgG or IgA proteins. This can lead to a variety of symptoms, including anemia, lytic lesions in bone, hypercalcemia, renal failure, immunosuppression, and the accumulation of AL amyloid. Laboratory findings include a rouleau or stacked chip appearance of red blood cells on a peripheral blood smear, as well as the observation of an M spike on a serum protein electrophoresis. Bence-Jones antibody fragments are usually also found in 24-hour urine collections, and a bone marrow biopsy may reveal over 10% plasma cells, a sign of plasma cell cancer. Here's to your sky-high test score coming up soon. See you next time.